I'm going to read today from an old classic, Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland novel. It's a children's story. You can always find a little bit of wisdom here, and it's interesting how Alice has this conversation with a caterpillar when she gets shrunken down into a very small size after she falls down the rabbit hole and goes on her big adventure. So I'm just going to read a part of it for fun. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last, the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. "Who are you?" said the caterpillar. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Alice replied rather shyly, I hardly know, sir. Just at present, at least, I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then." "What do you mean by that?" said the caterpillar sternly. "Explain yourself." "I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir," said Alice, "because I'm not myself, you see." "I don't see," said the caterpillar. "I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly," Alice replied very politely. "For I can't understand it myself to begin with, and being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing." "It isn't," said the caterpillar. "Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet," said Alice. "But when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will someday, you know. And then after that into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel it a little queer, won't you?" "Not a bit," said the caterpillar. "Well, perhaps your feelings might be different," said Alice. "All I know is it would feel very queer to me." "You?" said the caterpillar contemptuously. "Who are you?" Which brought them back again to the beginning of the conversation. Alice felt a little irritated at the caterpillar's making such very short remarks, and she drew herself up and said very gravely, "I think you ought to tell me who you are first." "Why?" said the caterpillar. Well, here was another puzzling question. And as Alice could not think of any good reason, and as the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away. "Come back," the caterpillar called after her. "I have something important to say." This sounded promising, certainly. Alice turned and came back again. "Keep your temper," said the caterpillar. "Is that all?" asked Alice, swallowing down her anger as well as she could. "No," said the caterpillar. Alice thought she might as well wait, as she had really nothing else to do, and perhaps, after all, it might tell her something worth hearing. For some minutes it puffed away without speaking, but at last it unfolded its arms, took the hookah out of its mouth again, and said, "So you think you're changed, do you?" "I'm afraid I am, sir," said Alice. "I can't remember things as I used, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together." "Can't remember what things?" said the caterpillar. "Well, I've tried to say, 'How doth the little busy bee?' but it all came out different," Alice replied in a very melancholy voice. So the caterpillar has her at this point repeat a poem that's too long for me to read, about old age, interestingly enough, and why an old man is different in his old age than he was in his youth, as he's being questioned by a youth, or after Alice finishes. The caterpillar says, "No, that is not quite right," said the caterpillar. "Not quite right, I'm afraid," said Alice timidly. Some of the words had gotten altered. "It is wrong from beginning to end," said the caterpillar decidedly, and there was silence for some minutes. The caterpillar was the first to speak. "What size do you want to be?" it asked. "Oh, I'm not particular as to size," Alice hastily replied. "Only one doesn't like changing so often, you know." "I don't know," said the caterpillar. Alice said nothing. She had never been so much contradicted in her life before, and she felt that she might be losing her temper. "Are you content now?" said the caterpillar. "Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind," said Alice. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be." "It is a very good height indeed," said the caterpillar angrily, rearing itself upright as it spoke. It was exactly 3 inches high. "But I'm not used to it," pleaded poor Alice in a piteous tone, and she thought to herself, "I wish the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended." "You'll get used to it in time," said the caterpillar, and it put the hookah into its mouth and began smoking again. Now, if you took out the words caterpillar and Alice and the questions about size, but maintained the old idea of change and asking who you are and not quite knowing from one moment to the next, Alice could have been talking to any great sage and getting the same kind of answers. You know, "Oh yeah, you know what it's like to change." "No, I don't," says the sage. "Who are you?" "Well, see, I don't really know. I was one thing this morning, and now I've changed quite significantly." And you see how it is. We carry it with us through the day, here in a child's story, the wisdom of sages being talked about in a way that a child would understand, indeed, and a way we should understand, indeed. You are not the changes, so that is why you are confused. The caterpillar never knows what the changes are, possibly because he's not identified with changing. And then he asks her, "Well, what height do you want to be?" And she says, "Oh, I'm not particular," but then she has a preference. So she is indeed confused. Anyway, sort these things out. Find some good answers for the caterpillar, and let's get together and talk about it sometime.